Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. We're on our lesson 7 Q&A Zoom meeting here. And yeah, looking forward to reviewing this lesson with all of you. So let us take a look at maybe what we'll do first of all here is take a look at the assignment and see if anybody has any questions about that. Okay. Let's get my chat open here so I can keep track. Alrighty, yeah, so lesson 7. So lesson 7 is, it's not going to be too hard. It's a little bit tricky with site cross-section map. So we'll go through that and I will show you an example of some work that we have done in that regard. Let's see. Okay, so we will start with our local ecological survey here. And as you can see, there's 2 parts to the assignment. And the ecological survey is worth 4 points and the site cross sections worth 10. That gives you a little bit of idea how to sort of spread your resources with both of those. And the ecological survey is pretty easy, and it's funny, it's an important piece, knowing what is going on in terms of your ecological system. But I must say it's we never go through this sort of process with a client. I guess if we were working out of our immediate area, somewhere completely different, I could see the value of doing that. But again, it's good background info to know, but I'm not sure that's something you would repeat with a client. But yeah, nonetheless, again, it's a useful exercise. So we want to look at the state of succession, that climax state of succession. So where I live, it's coastal Douglas fir forests. Up and down the coast, you're going to get that predominantly, but again, you start going inland and it's going to change somewhat. So just want to know, what is that? If we were to walk away from your project site and come back in 200, 300, 400 years, what would we expect to see? And certainly where I live, it would be old growth Douglas fir forest, with a mixture of other plants, of course, but that would be the predominant one. And we also want to look at 3 pioneer plants. So again, this is a useful part of the exercise to go through, because this can really help you with your future designs. If you are going to a prospective clients and you start spotting pioneer plants popping up, that tells you an awful lot. It tells you that there's certainly been some disturbance on this site. And these are the newcomers trying to help out, because that's essentially what they're trying to do. They've got a little niche and they're trying to predominantly build soil and restore the system there. So another thing that we want to look at is different stages of succession. So if we look at the soil food web, and I know we're looking predominantly, we're looking above ground here, but really it is dictated with what's going below ground. So I know we've gone over this before. This is a critical part of all landscapes, and it's these micro organisms that generate through their life processes plant available nutrients. So they're absolutely essential. And we have fungal and bacterial elements here. So when we get a disturbance, so if you go through an area with an excavator, these fungal organisms don't like disturbance too much. And what you'll find is these early succession pieces are predominantly bacterial. They're predominantly bacterial. So I'm just trying to find a nice drawing of to illustrate that. Let me just there we go. So, and what typically happens there is we get annual weeds, right? So we have disturbance, and the disturbance might be fire, it might be all kinds of things, but more often than not, it's human disturbance, and the soil's going to try and rebuild itself, which is quite amazing. And in most cases, as long as you're not in a fragile environment. So you typically will get annual weeds, and as time goes on, these will flower and die and spread their seeds, as well as starting to build a little bit of organic material in the soil. And so the succession keeps building until we get back to a mature forest, which is the other end of the spectrum, and that is a fungal dominant situation. And in a lot of our landscapes, what we're trying to shoot for is somewhere in the middle here, where we have a somewhat even population of bacteria versus fungal organisms, and that allows us to grow a wide range of plant material. So again, if you're in an early succession landscape, so you've just cleared a site and then you try and get some trees growing there, you may find that you're really in an uphill battle. So even though this part of the survey doesn't have necessarily a huge focus, it is really important to observe, because it does help you to navigate your process on the build end. So how are you going to create some planting areas that are going to indeed thrive versus being stuck in this annual weed cycle?
Jamie, can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is Rachel. So if I'm working with an urban site, and it's not a very big site, and I'm not sure that I can really say that I have any pioneer plants on it. I mean, I guess just random, I mean, dandelion maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Should I look to a local area? There is a more natural area in the, not too far. And I'm thinking that maybe pioneer plants in that area would be, I mean, I could say that it's not on the site, but that it's in the area.
Yeah, well, you may have pioneer plants on your urban site, and they may not be completely obvious. So some of the pioneer plants we might associate with, like, let's say bracken, right? So bracken's often a plant that'll come back from fire or disturbance. But believe it or not, there's plants like Douglas fir and alder that are also pioneer plants, even though they are woody. So I get it, though. In an urban spot, it's often a different thing. Maybe even looking at, does your site have turf grass?
They do have some turf, but I'm yeah. I mean, I kind of associate pioneers with, like what you said, disturbances and like poplars or alder or
Mm-hmm.
there. I think there just isn't a lot. Like, I think this place is a pretty blank slate with maybe a few weeds
Okay.
You know, like dandelion or maybe a plantain or
Well, those are a couple that would
yeah,
fit the
I
bill.
I guess they don't like fall like when I think yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gray area because it like here's an example. I have a part of my landscape that is, oh gosh, it's over 2 decades old. It's been renovated multiple times. It's in the midst of being renovated now, and I have pioneer plants poking up, and yet it's an older bed. But that tells me a lot about the condition of it. And so, yeah, you might have to look a little bit. If you can't find a third plant, then sure, try and just sort of peek outside the property boundary. But you probably surprise yourself, and you
I might need to go to a dark corner that
yeah, you
really lay
find
vibes on.
yeah,
Okay.
sure. Well, I hope that helped you.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess number 4 here, we're looking at what kind of disturbances happened. So in an urban setting, that's pretty easy. It has been human in order to situate a house there. They would have had to remove a lot of material. And then we want to look at 5 birds and then your local food chain. So let me just get the template file going here. Yeah, and there should be, I'll make this a little bit bigger. There should be some pretty reasonable examples next to these slides. So there's a semi-arid situation. And here's an older field. And our property is a good example here. We had at least probably a hectare of pasture when we moved here, and we didn't want pasture. So we've allowed it to regenerate it. And, it's got a significant amount of tree and shrub elements in it. So this is another good example that may be happening on your project site. So yeah, this again, I think is pretty straightforward and does offer, a pretty big insight into your project site as well. So knowing if I would say one of the hardest situations, although in some ways it's good to know what you're getting into. But let's say your client it's a brand new home that's being built, and the exterior of that would just be like a war zone. It would look like it's sort of bombed out when the house is completed. So that would be, very much pulled strongly in that early succession stage. So you got to kind of think, how can I push this along so that the plant material that I add to this is going to be thriving in these conditions? And we've kind of sorted out how to do that in our location. And unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with excavation and bed preparation. So because of the soils where we live are so poor, there's a very thin soils. So during house construction, those soils have probably been scraped and removed, unless somebody had, some good foresight to stack it and save it for later use. But we have to import soil, which is basically a pretty poor dead material. But what we do is after we're all planted and have our irrigation in, we come in with a really high quality compost, and that literally jump starts the ecological function in the soil, and we get really good response from it. So that's what we have to do here on, projects we have, because if we were trying to grow within our native soils, especially after a build, it would be a very, very long process. And most of our clients don't have that patience. So, and here's your bird species. Those look pretty straightforward. Same with your food chain, and then your SWOT analysis. So that looks like we've covered that first little bit. Is there any other questions about the ecological survey? Happy to answer those. And you can either type it in the chat here or unmute yourself, either one. Okay, well, let's take a look at what I would say is slightly harder part of the assignment, and that's the site cross section. And we do provide these for clients, but believe it or not, it's mainly for commercial projects. We don't often do these for residential work. Now, saying that, we will do some perspective drawings to give people an idea of what the new landscape may look like. In particular, if we're using retaining walls and a lot of hardscape, it really does help visualize. But that's what we're going to try and do here. So to start with that, we want to use Google Earth. So maybe the easiest thing to do, I'll get Google Earth Pro going here while I'm covering the first part of this, and then we can just do an example on that. And if you are using Google Earth or Google Maps, this is not something I would recommend you do for your clients, because Google Earth, the resolution is just so low that you're not going to get very accurate info. Yeah, go ahead, Renee. You have a question?
Yeah, good morning. I have I was looking at through the template, and this is literally a question about the template itself. It seems to have a few slides in the cross-section area, and I guess for me it's unclear
Right.
if we need to do more than one cross-section.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a choice here. No, you don't have to do more than one.
Okay.
You could choose whatever format. Okay, so this is your plan view, right? So you're going to be overhead plan view showing your cross-section line and
Right.
designate some identification on each side of the line. So that makes sense. And you can either place that here, or you can utilize this this method where there's sort of a grid layout.
Okay, so
Yeah.
97 through 99 are all about, these are choices on how to make your single slide that's a cross-section, essentially.
Yeah, so if let's say you had pretty good topographic information for your project site, but you didn't want to use Google Earth. So you could use this grid system to lay out points within your landscape and then connect all the dots later, if that makes sense. What you'll probably find, the critical thing that we want everybody to follow with this is that we are on a 1-to-1 ratio. I'm not sure if that is, yeah, right here. So what that means is when we're putting this together, the length and the height, or the horizontal and the vertical, are the same proportion, they're same scale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's important because when we are cutting into the landscape here and looking at it from a side view, we want it to be as realistic as possible. And if we have to change the scale, then we're going to get a disproportionate. And sometimes that might need to happen. If you were doing a site cross-section of a very large area, let's say it was 100 acres, and you wanted to show some detail with some of the elements, you may decide you're going to change the scale on the vertical. And often, in my experience, civil engineering, they do that with grading plans, but that's, completely different. That's so that a excavation contractor can read it and do their work accordingly. Whereas here, we're just trying to visualize. But yeah, so just use one of these, and then there's some grids here you can use if you need to do that. So hopefully that makes some sense. I'll just give you an example here. Does that make sense, Renee? Or
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you very
okay,
much.
okay. Let's see here. Well, don't know what that's about. Yeah, let's. Oh gosh, I've got lots of things turned on here. So I apologize. I don't, I use Google Earth Pro for a few things, but never for design work. And we do use it to communicate with clients, but not for design work itself. So let's say, we're right here, and we will put a box around our project site boundary. All right. Well, I wouldn't normally use purple, but there we go. Let's say we want to do this is our project site, and we want to use Google Earth here to try and figure out our our cross-section map. Oh gosh. Oh, that moved with it. That's nice. All right. So what you have to do is you have to use this tool up in the corner here. It's called the path tool. I don't think it's going to highlight. No, it's not going to tell me, but that's the one we would pick. Now, I'm not sure you see the box that's come up here, but I have a little dialog box. And maybe what I'll do, I'll just reshare that with the whole desktop. There we go. Let's try that again. There we go. So you'll have this box show up, and you just ignore that. So let's say I want to figure out, I want to do a site cross section, and I want to use this line. So you just place the line where you want it. You can change it. You can do whatever you want with it. And when you're happy with that, you are going to, of course, you're going to take a screenshot of this, but you're going to go okay. And then that's going to show up on your menu at the bottom here as an untitled path. So now what you do is you right click that and you go to show elevation view. And then you are going to see the elevations that Google Earth is letting you know here. And you'll also note that when you're moving your cursor along here on the top screen, it's also moving. So now we can tell on the north end of this property, it's about 49 meters. And at the south end, it looks like it's more like 58. And that's, so this would be something that we could use to create this site cross section. And we have our scale down below, right? These are in these lines that are going up are in 10-meter increments. So we could take a screenshot of that and trace over it to create a slightly nicer graphic. We're just going to go to an example here. So here's an example. So the main thing we're trying to get from Google Earth Pro is the grade. So this line right here. So once you've got the grade of the land in place, you can pop in all these elements pretty easily. It's just trying to figure out the lay of the land and how that slopes. And here's an example down below of where this section map has been drawn. And you can see here that we wouldn't need Google Earth to figure this out if we were just to look at this drawing and these contours, and we can measure the space between the contours. So as you go along, and I can't really see it here, but let's say this is 40 feet and you're going down a foot, you know that you come along this line 40 feet and do a little mark, and you're going to be coming down a foot at that point. So it's just translating the grade, the finished grade from a drawing up to the side view or the site cross section. So you can, again, you can use Google Earth, or if you have good info already, which many of you will have because of lesson number 5, right? We had to have some pretty good topographic info for that. You can basically just take a look at this and sort of plot this out, and that's where the grid might be helpful, right? Using some sort of a grid so that you know these are, and this could be meters or feet or whatever you want it to be, and the same with these grids here. So you can get pretty accurate with that slice in the landscape. And here's another one here, and this is quite lovely. This I find this example, although we're not necessarily now. The only thing I would say with this is that typically a section drawing is going to be like this is. So it's as if you've cut the surface of the land and you're looking straight at it. So houses are not going to be in a perspective view like this. They are going to be in this 2D straight on view. And we're not really able to depict the depth of the image here other than what's been done here, where they've grayed out plant material that is beyond what they want to show, beyond that initial scope or elements that are close to the line here. So everything that's further back, they've grayed, which I like that idea of doing that. So this is lovely, but it is a little bit off because it's not, we're not looking at it right as a 2D. This is a bit of a perspective view. And I think the beauty of the section drawing is the proportion. So when we look at this, we can see the proportion of existing elements, the house, how much space we have here, the lay of the land. You know, you can tell just by looking at this, you're going to have water coming towards the building. That's not always the best idea. Maybe that's not a huge deal in New Mexico. It might be where I live. And I've certainly seen homes that have that. Okay. I see there's something in the chat here, sorry. Okay, Becca's got a question. Put your base map in Google Docs. Okay, yes, I saw your question there, so let's take a look at that. So Becca's question is she wants to do a section drawing across the bottom. Sure. Yeah, there you can decide wherever you want it to be, and that's totally fine, Becca. So yeah, I would just go with that, and that's a great idea. And I'll show you an example here of what we have done, and that kind of feeds into that. This is a section drawing we did of a commercial project many years ago, and the reason we did this is it was a requirement by the governing town, and they want to know, just as Becca may wish to know, what's this project going to look like when it's built out. So this is a 5-acre site, and there's nothing here except these existing trees and this existing development up here. So we had to create this. Now, fortunate for us, my software will do this, and I don't have to do all this by hand. That would take quite a while, and I don't really have great drawing skills, although I'm sure I could refine those. But yeah, this is typically what we do, and this is taken from the road, a roadway that comes up the side of the property. So again, the district or the governing area, they want to know what it's going to look like, and they can see there's good vegetation that we're putting in here, and it's screening some of the building from the road, but they get a very good idea of what the typical person's going to see. So long story short, Becca, that's kind of what you're looking at. You mentioned that you wanted to do a section in that location because there's a call for a privacy hedgerow there. So this would allow you to take that one step further. So you're going to be looking at this as an existing standpoint. You're not going to be adding plant material at this point, but yeah, does that make sense? Go chat. Okay. What is the best way to measure tree height? There are a number of different methods. I would do a little bit of Googling to figure that out. Honestly, I don't do that, but it's a good thing to know how to do it. It's a question of measuring from the tree in that you're looking at and the angle. So again, I would take a look at some of these. Oh, there's a calculator back there. There should be a resource in the, there you go. So top, bottom, and distance, and that'll give you the height. Yeah, so here, I will just put this in the chat. You can take a look at that. Yeah, let's see if there's any resources in here. There you go, you do have a few. There's 2 little videos. Maybe 3. Okay, so there is some there. Let's see what else we want to point out with that. So you'll also notice the section I showed you is not what you would, I have no labels, there's no scale. Well, there is a scale on the sheet. So what you'll probably find is when you finish the course, say you're designing for others, that you know, what works well for you to document either your designs or things like this, you know, you may modify them a bit. And I know before I've talked about the template and it being 150 odd pages, and there's just no way we could provide that for a client. But you'll probably end up cherry picking some ideas there and to see what works best. And for us, we will do a base plan, we'll do a sector compass, then we will move to a water layer, an access layer, and a soil layer. And all of those make up the concept plan, which is basically what your final design is going to be. So that's 6 different distinct layers. Now that can sort of expand out to, you know, maybe 10 or 12 design sheets, but it's not 150. But so just keep that in the back of your mind. The template is this kind of collage of education, and for some of these resources you could potentially reuse. But I wouldn't recommend using 150 sheets on a project. Let's go back here. So yeah, we're looking at that side view, and again, we want an A and a B on those lines, because the A and the B is going to coincide with what's on your overhead plan. And that way we can tell what side of the line we are standing when we're observing. So if we look at this, we're over here. We're on the south side of the line looking at the dwelling. So in this case, they've cut in the middle of that dwelling, but included, you know, fencing and trees and sidewalks and stuff. So yeah, hopefully that is clear. Again, this can be very useful when we're looking at retaining walls, right? So if you have elevations on your site and you know you have a patio surface or a walkway, and then you have this elevated land uphill from it, it does give you a very good idea of how much retaining you would need and how that would look. So this is a very useful exercise, and in that example, it may be something that's very small. You may not be doing this large area. You may just be really focused on say this retaining wall and stairways. So you really want to be able to tell how many stairs do I need to go up from this elevation to the next. So again, this is useful for that. And just so you know, typically stairs are 6 to 8 inches in height, and you know, you can figure it out that way. I'd highly recommend you always keep your stairs the same height. For some reason, our brains, they get accustomed to the same height of stair tread. So if you put in a 6 inch, a 8 inch, a 10 inch, you know, you'd be confusing many people that were using it. So yeah, try and keep that all consistent. And I guess the other thing is just placing the microclimate for each portion of that below the section drawing, you know, and that's of interest, right? And here they're asking for succession. You know, you don't have to do that. That's not being asked. You can if you wish. Okay, and an accurate scale. So that's always an important thing to include with all your work. And the scale, that can be at the bottom here, but it's also, you definitely want to scale on the horizontal and or vertical, as well as a few labels just saying how high these major elements are. And they can be, you know, you can pretty much guess. You don't have to go to too much trouble with that. Again, that's really up to you. I want want to make sure that as you're going through these lessons that we're really focusing on the important part. And if you ended up spending hours calculating the height of a tree, you know, that may be a skill you want to develop beyond the class if you need to do that a lot. But honestly, in my whole career, I don't think I've ever measured the height of any tree. I think I've always just been guessing what they are, and that's been adequate, at least in the context of the jobs that we've been doing. So, all right. Any questions, anybody, about that whole process, or is that fairly clear? Happy to go over anything with you. Okay, that's great, Derek. Maybe what I'll do, got a few minutes left here. Maybe what I'll do, I'll just show you a couple examples. This is that commercial project I showed you. So this is the overhead view of it. And there's a lot of information here. So what happens on these commercial jobs, which they're interesting, but they're not fun, be honest. Because you're working with other professionals. So you've got civil engineers, you have architects, so everybody's exchanging files. So we import their work and then start adding to it. And it is very interesting, but it's tricky. So that was the section drawing. These little notes here relating to sheet numbers, and there's another one of the base plan. So this was our proposed landscape, and where this project was, there was, let me see here, this green band. This is a minimum required vegetation buffer that's required on this job. So that's one of the things that's you have to look at when you're going through jobs like this, but that you meet minimum requirements. So that's all in the bylaws, building bylaws, or land use bylaws for a given area. And this is a little 3D map of the area. We're very fortunate our computer can generate these things, and I pretty much had to replace my computer on this job because the computer power required to do something like this was way beyond my machine at that time. And these are just sort of side views, but this is the sort of thing they want to see. Like here you're in lot number 2. What's this development going to look like? And you're looking at the top of a roof, and then the vegetation buffer that's proposed and that sort of thing, and then some details here. So that one's again, these are not the most exciting. Okay, let's start this one up. Yeah, and here's the beginnings of an agricultural project we did, a farm design. So these are just the first couple layers. So with all the farm designing we do, we use the Agrarian platform, which is 10 distinct design layers. And the first one that we start with is climate. So we're looking at Geiger climate classification here, which is not part of this course, but it's fascinating. It's just a system used to identify climates that are similar. So you can see the West Coast here, we're at a CSB, and you look at this globally, and you can see other areas of the world that have similar. So it's amazing how unique the West Coast is, or all the way up and down. The CSB goes right down to Northern California, I believe. And so that, yeah, we put this in. This is one of our sheets, and then we get into more geography where we're looking at a site itself, the site boundary with some topographic information. So we're able to look at some LiDAR imagery and extract contours from that. These are 1 foot contours. I believe that's what we did on this project. And that helps us generate the slope analysis. So with an agricultural setting, you want to know, this is very valuable info. That legend's not quite right, so ignore that. Looks like this should be at 8 to 10, and these should be pushed up. But the greener it is, the flatter it is, and that makes it much easier in terms of planning your crops and what your function is there. This had a waterway going through it, a drainage system, and you can see that here with the steeper slopes. And then we can do a hillshade projection, and then these are great because you get a really good feel of the relief of the area, and you can see this river in the area, or this would be a large creek running into a river, and how this is one branch that comes through the project site. So that gives us a really good feel for what's going on there, and sort of an overall slope analysis. And we're looking at land capability here. So what this land is capable of. And then we can look at these limiting factors, right? So once we get up into soils that are, 20 to 20% or more in grade, we have to be really careful of what is going to be going on there in terms of any production, or whether we just want them to be vegetated with trees. And we've got some key line patterns. I won't get into what key line's about, but basically trying to distribute the water that's already on site and try and even that out. And these end up being patterns that we plant. I don't know if I have. There we go. So these are proposed fruit or nut trees. These would be fruit trees primarily. And the pattern of this planting helps to even out the water in this area. So the same with these up here. And this is the nice thing about keyline, is having these even rows in between plantings, so that you can do all sorts of things with this. You can run animals up here, you can have another crop going there. It could be hay, it could be annual vegetables, it could be all sorts. And then we got a hedgerow that we wanted to design into that. And of course, this is the ideal sort of hedgerow layout, where you have a low elevation coming up to high and then going back down again. And that way, when wind is approaching whatever direction, it's going to get pushed up and over. So, but the downside is you need quite a bit of width to make that happen. And let's see here if there's anything else that's of interest. That was our building layer. So I'm going to do a passive solar greenhouse, sort of a community building, new home. This project has not moved forward. The economy is not being friendly to my clients, so yeah, the design is hasn't gone forward as of yet. But if they're ready to do it, at least they've got some documentation there. All right. See how much time we got. We got a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to ask? Okay. Maybe what I'll do is just show you one more quick example here. This was a small acreage that we did, residential property. And I don't have the sector map on here. But this is the first design layer that we start with. So we're in this situation. We had a drone survey done. So we have these high resolution images, which are quite great when you zoom in. I don't know how good it'll be here, but you can zoom right in on these high definition images, and so you can see quite a bit of detail. So for mapping, it's absolutely brilliant. So we start, in this case, we start with the drone image, and that generates contours for us, or the drone operator does that for us. So we've got 1 foot contours. And then we know where water is traveling on the site. A big part of this project was rainwater harvesting. So we had a metal roof shop here and a metal roof on the house. And we proposed either collecting 12,000 gallons or 15,000. And I won't get into the charts here, but this is the way we do our calculations, where we have month to month average annual rainfall. And then we have potential collection, we have usage. So we've got to figure out our usage based on the area of the landscape. And then that basically gives us a net month-end tank balance. And then we know how much we're going to have to supplement and how much goes to overflow. So you can see in this calculation, 12,000, we had about 26,000 liters that we have to supplement. Whereas if we bump up our storage, we're going to have 15. And then if we collected off the house and the shop, we're only having to supplement, that looks like 8,500. So it's a great tool because we don't have to guess. We can roughly calculate usage, and that is going to change month to month. So May's usage is going to be different than August. What else here? Yeah, we've got our average annual rainfall and some of these catchment areas. So this is kind of, and then we're going to show the cisterns. So here we have a small shop with 2 roof areas, and we're going to actually capture in these small cisterns, which really are just going to be pump chambers. So the water is going to come into here. It's going to get pumped over to the main storage. So there's still lots of space to navigate with a vehicle. And then this gets pushed into the main irrigation system. And we can either turn this on or off. In other words, we can use the community water system or the rainwater system. And it's been sized for both. So we actually had to scale back a little bit because the community water, I think we're getting 8 gallons a minute of flow, whereas this sort of system here, we could push out about 25 if we wanted to. But we won't get into that too much at the moment. This was the next layer. So this is our access layer. It's what we call access. So patios and walkways, and here there's parking. We have a proposed building over here. So any structural elements, so passive solar greenhouse again. And here's kind of a little, this is not high quality or anything, but this just gives our clients an idea. We were proposing to put these planters, stone face planters at the front of the house. And we didn't do that. We ended up planting at grade. So that was a good savings there. But we have this little patio. And again, these are all proposed design elements. And this is our soil layer. So we go in the subsequent order. We prioritize water, and then the access follows the water. And then we put the icing on the cake, so to speak, and pretty it up with some plant material and soften all that hard surface. And all of that overlays and makes up this initial concept. And that's essentially what you're going to be producing in lesson 10. When we get to the very end, you'll have your final design, which will be conceptual in nature. So conceptual is just that it's sort of a big picture view of the landscape. If we went into more detail, more detail as we do in subsequent sheets here, then we're getting into, we have the concept, but now we have specific details about what plant goes where. And not only that, we have a permeable paving area. That was this grid material. So we've kind of isolated some of these details so that there's clarity. When we price this, we know what we're pricing, as well as our client is totally in alignment with what is on paper here. So that's one of the beauties of putting more and more detail in your drawings is, for instance, here, there's no mystery. Well, what are you going to use? Well, here it is, right? And there's actually a step before this that we're not showing you, where we do what's called a planting palette. So we would show a wide range, a list and pictures of plant material that we could see working here. And then as I'm doing the planting plan, I'm just sort of extracting off of that list. So everybody knows what's going to be used here, because once I've done this, I don't edit this at all. Whereas all these other layers are that we provide, we want feedback, and we get, and we edit based on feedback. But when we get into the planting, it's kind of a final item, mainly because if you even change one item in the back here, that can throw the whole bed off, and you might have to redo the whole planting. So that is no fun. And Yeah, so that is about it. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to look at some of the work that we've done, and just give you an idea if you're continuing on with design after the course, you know, what sort of things that you may want to consider putting into your drawings. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending today. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your assignments next week. So you have a great week. And if for some reason you run into any trouble, just drop me a note, and we'll do our best to point you in the right direction. But yeah, thank you again for all your time, and take care.